The first story of the loyal dog. Ida said that in a certain place in Luan Prefecture, there was an individual named Mr. A. His father had been imprisoned due to a matter and was on the verge of death. Mr. A exhausted all his family's wealth, collecting 100 taels of silver to use in seeking favors from officials in the county capital. He set out on a journey with a mule, and his little black dog at home followed him. Mr. A scolded and drove away the dog, instructing it to return home. However, as he continued on his way, the dog kept following him persistently. No matter how much Mr. A whipped it, the dog would not go back. The dog followed him for dozens of miles. Halfway through the journey, Mr. A dismounted and went to relieve himself by the roadside. After he finished, he threw a stone at the dog to chase it away, and only then did the dog run off. As Mr. A continued his journey, the dog suddenly caught up again, biting the mule's tail and hooves. Annoyed, Mr. A whipped the dog, causing it to whimper incessantly. Suddenly, the dog leaped ahead, angrily biting the mule's head, seemingly trying to block his path. Mr. A felt that this was an ill omen, which further aggravated his anger. He turned his mule around, intending to chase away the dog. When he saw that the dog had gone far, he hurriedly turned the mule back and galloped toward his destination. By the time he arrived at the county capital, it was nearly evening. As he checked his money pouch, he realized that half of the silver was missing. Sweating profusely, he felt his heart sink. He tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. Suddenly, he remembered that the dog's barking must have had a reason. Early the next morning, he rose and waited at the city gate for it to open. Once the gate opened, he left the city, retracing the path he had taken on his way and searching carefully. However, he considered that this was a major north-south road with countless travelers. There was no reason to believe the lost silver would still be there. He hesitated but eventually arrived at the spot where he had dismounted his mule earlier. There, he found the dog dead in the grass. The sweat had soaked its fur, making it appear as though it had just been washed. Mr. A lifted the dog's ear and discovered that the lost silver had been neatly arranged there. Touched by the loyalty of the dog, Mr. A was moved. He purchased a coffin and gave the dog a proper burial. People began referring to the grave as Tomb of the Loyal Dog. The second story of the loyal dog. Ida said that in Zhou village, there was a merchant who conducted business in Wuhu and accumulated a great fortune. He hired a boat to return to his hometown. On the riverbank, he noticed a butcher about to slaughter a dog. The merchant paid double the price to buy the dog and kept it on the boat with him. Unbeknownst to the merchant, the boatman was a habitual thief. Observing the merchant's wealth, the boatman steered the boat into a reed thicket, raised his knife, and attempted to kill the merchant. The merchant begged the thief to spare him a complete corpse. The thief bound the merchant tightly with a piece of felt, tossed him into the river, and let him float away. Seeing the merchant thrown into the river, the dog howled, jumped into the water, and clamped its mouth onto the felt-wrapped body, floating with it in the river. They drifted for miles before getting stranded on a shallow sandbar. The dog emerged from the water and continued to wail. Some passers-by believed there must be a reason behind this and followed the dog to the sandbar. They discovered a bundle of felt in the water, pulled it out, and cut the rope. The merchant, who had not yet died, woke up and recounted the story of his misfortune. He implored other boatmen to take him back to Wuhu, where he intended to wait for the return of the thief's boat. Upon boarding the ship, the merchant discovered that his dog was missing. He was deeply saddened by this loss. Upon reaching Wuhu's dock, he searched for 3 to 4 days. But despite the numerous mass of trading ships, he couldn't find the thief's vessel. At that moment, a fellow villager offered to take him back to Zhou village. Suddenly, the dog returned on its own, barking loudly at the merchant. The merchant called out to it, but the dog turned and left. The merchant disembarked to chase after it, but the dog sprinted onto another ship, biting the calf of a man on board and refusing to release its grip despite the man's attempts to strike it. The merchant approached, scolding the dog, only to discover that the dog was biting the habitual thief. It turned out the thief had changed his clothes and his ship, making him unrecognizable to the merchant. The merchant tied up the thief and searched the ship, discovering that all his money was still there. Ah, a dog can repay kindness in this way. Those heartless individuals in the world should be ashamed for not even being as good as a dog.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.